As today's Newspoll shows, there's now a real chance that Anthony Albanese could lead a one-term government. Now, sure, the conventional wisdom is that governments always get a second term. And yes, it's almost 100 years since the Credlin government was thrown out after just one term during the Great Depression. But the electorate is a lot more volatile than in Credlin's day. And Labor too is different, increasingly in the thrall of the hard green left. There's also a sense in the community the country's headed in the wrong direction, that ministers are not up to the job, and that this is a government, more often than not, making a bad situation worse. Hence the Newspoll result that for the first time this term, the government and the opposition are level pegging at 50-50 in two-party preferred terms. Now, in primary vote terms, that's 38 points to the coalition, they're up 1, and 31 points, just 31% to Labor, who are down 4. And it's the primary vote that I track more than anything. Now, a lot of other commentators have said today this is the worst primary vote result for Labor since the election. But actually, it's their worst Newspoll result in a decade, since October 2013. It's even worse than the Turnbull and Morrison low ebbs, which says a lot, doesn't it? It does not mean an imminent challenge to the Prime Minister. No, it doesn't. That's now much harder on both sides than it was in the Rudd, Gillard, Abbott, Turnbull era, given all the rule changes. But it's worth noting that this Newspoll, in Rudd's time, 52-48, said then to be a shocker. Well, that was a Newspoll that Julia Gillard used to roll Kevin Rudd. Labor's primary vote back then too was 35%, compared today to just 31%. Now, Labor optimists will say they've got 18 months to go, that this is just midterm blues that nearly every government suffers. But to believe that would be a mistake, because a government that was elected without any real mandate or clear program, this government, perhaps other than The Voice, which has failed, and cutting power bills, which hasn't happened at all, doesn't get the usual goodwill or benefit of the doubt. As well, it's hard to see how the government can readily recover, given that it's doubling down on the energy madness that even climate-caring corporates are now admitting is driving us off a cliff. It's doubling down too on union-dictated workplace relations changes to get a win in the Parliament, even though these will further depress a national productivity performance that must lift. It has no answer either to out-of-control legal immigration, even though record numbers of newcomers are pushing wages up, pushing wages down, driving housing costs up and clogging infrastructure. And as we've seen in recent weeks, it's looking very shaky, both on national security grounds, where the PM couldn't bring himself to tell Australians whether he stood up for our sailors with the Chinese president or not, and on border security, where we've just had illegal arrivals from Java turn up on the Australian mainland for the first time in almost a decade. What's more, it's hard to see any good news coming for the government. To every problem, its only response is extra spending, or a review, or hand-wringing. The last best example is a green energy announcement from Chris Bowen last week to spend billions more on renewables in a plan that is uncosted, a plan he refuses to tell taxpayers how much of their money he'll spend, and a plan that's been already mocked by industry experts. But it's Bowen, the bloke with the worst record on border protection, so why would anyone expect better? However, before Peter Dutton's team get too cocky and complacent about their chances, they need to remember the next coalition government needs to be so much better than where the last one ended up. And that means, yes, it's got to take the fight up to Labor every day, but it also needs to do the policy work needed to fix the mess if and when it gets elected.